I think what the last few years have taught me as the SABRE Awards have become more international is that the best quality of work in any given market is as good as the best quality work anywhere, which is to say that I think the best programs coming out of China, the best programs coming out of Singapore, the best programs coming out of Japan are every bit as good as the best programs that come out of the United States. What's different for us right now is that we see a much higher volume out of the States. So if you were talking about programs that would get an A+, as it were, you might see 20 or 30 of them out of the States, whereas you might see 1 or 2 out of Hong Kong, 1 or 2 out of Australia. But I think that's more a function of the size of the market than it is of sophistication or maturity at this point. I think that the best quality of work that we have seen is probably out of the more developed markets, which essentially means Hong Kong, Singapore, and Australia, where I think there's a very plentiful quantity of good public relations people with experience and expertise across different practice areas. But the biggest improvement has certainly come out of mainland China. In the years that I've been covering the business, that has gone from being essentially a sort of special events, sponsorship, product publicity market to being a market where you're seeing a full range of corporate responsibility, corporate and financial issues management, public affairs programs that are really first rate. And I suspect that the markets where we don't see a lot of good work are actually markets where we haven't invested the time. And so markets like Korea or Indonesia or Malaysia, which are obviously all developing and becoming very sophisticated, are just markets where we don't have the reach yet to necessarily see the best work that's being done. The last couple of years, I've seen a tremendous volume of really good work in the consumer sphere. I think in general, public relations is moving into a much more central role in brand building and product positioning. We've gone beyond publicity now to a place where we're really engaging with consumers through a really wide range of sort of tactics, from special events, which have always been a big part of the market out here, to online engagement. And I think the use of social media and digital media in Asia is pretty extensive, and the quality of work that I see in that space is very, very high. I think when we first started covering the Asia-Pacific market in depth, public relations was being used in a slightly more tactical way in Asia than it was certainly in North America, maybe in Europe. But I think the last 4 or 5 years have seen that gap close. And I actually think there are some ways now in which the business in this part of the world has opportunities that are maybe greater than you'll see in North America and Europe. What I mean by that is that I think in North America and Europe there's a lot of heritage of public relations as a product publicity or media relations business that has to be overcome. Whereas in a lot of the newer markets in Asia, clients don't necessarily have a preconceived notion of what it is PR can or should be doing. And so smart public relations people are able to say we can do everything from making ads and films for online, through to managing special events, through to doing some of the more traditional print and digital work. Well, first of all, I would say that anybody who doesn't think they can learn from other markets is probably approaching this whole business the wrong way. And when I first came to Europe from North America, the attitude of a lot of Americans was, hey, great, now you can go to Europe and teach them how to do PR the right way, which is to say the North American way. Anybody who approaches the world with that kind of mindset is making a mistake. I think that Americans have a lot to learn from Europe and Asia, Asians have a lot to learn from North America and Europe, and so on and so forth. So I think, part of what we want to do is share global knowledge. Having said that, it seems to me that the social media realm in Asia is slightly different than it is in North America, particularly looking at the Chinese market. I think that the potential for crises to emerge on Weibo and other services is actually much greater here. The way in which the Chinese youth in particular works on social media is pretty uninhibited and pretty outspoken. And I think companies have to be much more alert, and so they've actually, I think in a lot of cases, become much more proactive in engaging with social media than their counterparts, certainly in Europe, maybe also in North America.